Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Jervis, DiCicco, D like the letter, T like your face, O like the letter. If you're trying to get a handle on that last name. Very excited to be here and to talk about how we can solve the income crisis. We're living in a moment where employers can't afford to pay more and employees can't afford to earn less. And we have some fundamental ideas on financial wellness at ProsperBridge. That's our company. Maggie, my partner in crime, is here as well. And we're going to talk about those today. What does financial wellness really mean, and how can it be accessible? How can employers make it more accessible for their employees, and how can we as individuals make financial wellness more accessible? So thank you to all the sponsors that make the Level Up Academy happen. You've all seen these slides, I think. So how do we empower people and organizations to thrive together? How do we solve this problem of what feels like a resource deficiency? Raise your hand if you're an employer or you're an employer supporter. Okay? And raise your hand if you're an employee just here to learn. So what ProsperBridge does is a lot of the work that we're talking about today. We have some fundamental beliefs that I'll share in just a minute. But ultimately, we're trying to bridge this value gap between what people need and what employers are able to provide. So there's three things that I really want to deliver on today. The first is awareness. Why is this so hard? What has changed in the last decades that has made financial wellness feel so much more inaccessible to so many people? And how is the financial system treating different people differently? Why are different people having different outcomes with the same resources? The next thing I want to get into is value. Where are the opportunities to do exactly what I was just talking about? How do we bridge that value gap? What are the tools and resources that you can use to do that, even if you don't have any money to invest, because you're that employer that feels like you can't afford to pay more. And then the last thing is, how do we do this, right? Once we have an understanding of what's broken and where the opportunities are to fix it, how do we actually take those tools and make the necessary repair? I'm going to ask for a lot of audience participation today. So hopefully you're willing. But it's more fun for me when we all share a little bit. And I will start. I am one of those strange children that wanted to be in finance from a young age. It's not that mysterious. My dad ran a mortgage company, and my stepdad was a financial advisor. So I grew up reading the Wall Street Journal over breakfast. I was fascinated by these things called stocks, where you just bought one and it turned into more money. I never thought about when it turned into less money. And so that really informed in my career. I got into finance seriously in 2007, and I did very well very quickly. I was selling real estate securities when you think about the timing of that. And in 2009, my whole world fell apart. I came home to a note on the door from my wife telling me she was leaving me on February 12th. A few months later, my income was down 80%. In November of that year, my dad died. And by February of 2010, I was leaving my house under threat of foreclosure. And what that taught me, when I went to my financial team and I said, hey, I'm in crisis, I need help. And they said, we can't help you. Here's the money you gave us. It's worth 2/3 of what you invested. Split it with your ex-wife, come back and things good again. And I was like, there's something fundamentally broken here where we have a system that can profit off of you when things are good and things are bad. Not only can that help keep things back. And so we're trying to fix that. That's what ProsperBridge is about. How do we create an ecosystem where everyone can thrive? In 2017, I started working very seriously on how to solve that problem. I stayed in financial planning. I'll talk more about that a little bit later too. In 2020, ProsperBridge launched, and we started learning about what was working and what wasn't learning. And in 2022, we got funding from nonprofits to expand our services and start to grow. So that's the ProsperBridge story. All right, now I want to hear about your story. And we're going to write this down. If you're taking notes, we'll remember this. There's a YouTube video. It's only about 7 minutes. If you want to save yourself a few, you can watch it on time and a half now. I love that. It's called Step Inside the Circle. This has nothing to do with financial wellness. It is about how our prison system is broken. But it is such a cool exercise, and that's what informed this idea. Basically, it highlights how our prison our prisons are basically trauma centers. And I think that that's unfortunately actually a really good way to explain our relationship with money right now as well. And so this is sort of the idea of the exercise. I'm going to ask you some questions. I want you to raise your hand or stand up, or if you're not comfortable, don't do that. But raise your hand if you've ever been on your very last dollar. Okay. Raise your hand if you've ever missed a rent or mortgage payment. Raise your hand if you've ever had credit card debt that exceeded 20% of your income. Raise your hand if you've ever been evicted or foreclosed on. And raise your hand if you've ever had crypto. So we've all faced some pretty brutal financial crises. Can anyone share in one of those moments of deep financial trauma, a personal experience that was going on at the same time that made that even worse?
I was closing the doors on my gym that I worked very hard to open. My mother was diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer. Mm-hmm. So as I was trying to explain my absence to my clients, they were not very receptive towards staying with the gym and keep helping keep doors open with my absence, because I had to Arkansas. So I was going back and forth to training and to also be there because that's what my background is. So unfortunately, I was at work, and when they planned out the schedule or the surgery to help wean her from her illness, it wasn't the best surgery that I would have picked if I was there, but I wasn't. I was with clients, training, trying to keep business open, and also trying to be there with mother, being this my profession. So she actually ended up passing away 5 years prior to that. So I ended up closing my gym to go help out with her passing. So it was very difficult and trying at that time. Just what do I do, and how do I keep going back and forth to Arkansas? Like, how do I keep, you know what I mean? Please everyone, and still be the best son that I can most possibly be to my mother. So it's very difficult. Yeah. Very difficult. And not just please everyone, but how do I survive? Right. How's my business survive? I think when there's an intersection of financial trauma and personal crisis, it's one of the worst experiences that we can endure, because you have to choose between putting food on the table and taking care of that priority. One of the messages that I want to share in this presentation is that employers have the power to change that equation for employees. And that's why this is so important. Thank you so much for sharing that. We could talk for a while. My dad died in South Carolina. I was in St. Louis. You and I could share stories on that stroke for a while. This is heavy stuff, but what I want everybody to walk away with today is a sense of empowerment, because here is the beautiful truth. Work has the power to impact well-being more than almost any other activity in our lives. And fundamentally, why do I know that's true? Why is that true? Yeah, but why do I know that? Why do we all know, from a math perspective, that work has the power to change our lives? Because that's where we spend about half of our waking hours. If you're spending half the time you're awake at work, then there's obviously a lot of potential, right, to take or to give to your well-being. Employers can put dollars in people's pockets without paying them more. We're going to talk about that. You can do that as an individual as well. Employers can reduce costs and offer better benefits to their people. Employers can bring equity to a broken system. Employers don't have to say, well, the system's broken, that's not my problem. Employers can bring healing to that as well. And they can change stories and lives for people like us that experience that trauma. What's the problem, and how did we end up here? Well, the problem fundamentally is that people need more money than they have. It's not complicated. We need better resources.
what has contributed to this? One of my least favorite things in the world is a person of a certain age that feels like today's youth or adults are less financially responsible because they didn't achieve the same financial status that they did. And here's the dirty truth about that discriminatory thought. It's that 50 years ago, does anybody know in the Denver area how much a single family home costs relative to income? And by the way, this is the only relevant measure of a home's cost, called price to income ratio. Okay? Nothing else really matters except how the cost of a home relates to your income. How many years of income in 1973 did a Denver family need to purchase a home? Then they have a guess. One. Correct. And how many?
What was your response?
One year of income bought a home. So if you think about how much money you're making today, annually, that could buy you a house. From one person. From an average of 1.2 people working in a household. Does anybody know what the number is today? It's 7.5. And that's with an average of 1.8 people working in a household.
How many? 1.8.
Almost. So it's literally 7.5 times harder than it was 50 years ago. Okay, so when people say, well, kids these days just aren't as responsible and people are making worse financial decisions, there may be some truth to that, but the mathematical reality is that it's 7.5 times harder than it was 50 years ago to buy a house. Education costs, I think we all know about this, I'm not going to spend any time on it. Healthcare, the same. Benefits place. Does anybody know, Maggie, you can't answer this. Okay, a family of 3, so a single parent with 2 kids, okay, does anyone know Colorado minimum wage? 13? Yep.
I think it was 12 in Colorado, but Denver raised it to 15. And then it's been crawling up, and I think it's at like 13 something.
Yes, 13.85. 14 and change starting next year.
Yes, and then it'll get to 15 eventually.
Okay, so if you're a single parent making minimum wage, how much do you, and by the way, this is without kids in childcare. If you add that in, it gets even worse. So we're assuming the kids are beyond childcare age, they're in school full time. How much money do you need to make before you start to make any financial progress? Okay, so we're assuming if you're getting all the benefits for which you qualify at minimum wage for 2 kids, how much do you need to make before you start to make any progress? $26 now. You have to double your income before you see any return, because every dollar you make, you lose in food stamps, you lose in Section 8 housing, you lose in Medicaid, and some of those aren't just drops at cliffs. So you can actually be making less money, getting paid more, and be making less. Okay, so benefit cliffs are a huge part of this problem. Income taxes, man, I don't have time to talk about this. There's nothing more, other than benefits cliffs, there's nothing more disgusting our government does than tax our income. Do some research on that, but when you work with folks that are experiencing these challenges of being on their last dollar, and you see how government benefits interact with that, one of the problems we don't think about is that every month we have to pay the government, okay? And we don't get our refund except until we file our taxes. And that means for a lot of people that they're cash flow negative all year. So they're running up their credit cards and then they get that tax refund that we hope they would use to pay off their credit cards, but they've accumulated debt and all these other challenges over the next 12 months. So income taxes are one of those, I don't know if it's intentional, but they're one of those government disasters that make this year harder. Market forces, social media, advertising, debt access, there's all these forces. You know, even when I was growing up, if I got a credit card offer in the mail, it was based on my zip code and income level. Today, when you're online and you get a credit card offer, it's you, based on your search history, your purchase history. Advertising is much better at pulling us in today because they've got a lot more data on us. And debt access is much easier. There are huge issues of equity. Money treats people differently based on their identity, where they're from, their background, and it makes it harder for some people to harvest value. If I gave Jared $1,000 and I gave Mike $1,000, you would derive 2 very different outcomes from that same resource. Okay, we were just talking in Reagan's presentation about equity. Equity is about outcomes. Okay, how can we make sure that if I'm giving Jared and Mike the same dollar amount, that they're both able to achieve equitable outcomes? And what all this boils down to is that about 3 in 4 people in this country, and this is not just low and middle income folks. This is for the first time earlier this year, people making over $100,000, a majority of those people living paycheck to paycheck. So this is not just an income issue, okay? But 3 in 4 Americans say that money is their dominant source of stress, and 92% of employees report financial stress. All right, so another quick interactive session. What are your currently, and anybody that's vulnerable enough to answer, what are your current personal and business or money challenges? Anybody?
I like to pay a fair wage. And so my average employee starts at $24 an hour with no experience.
What line of work is that?
Yeah. What's that?
What line of work is that?
Landscape maintenance, design, and build.
Good for you.
And I have a lot of employees that are on salary because they've been with me for a long time, and I have benefits as well. And they get 6 weeks off a year. But a lot of them want to take time off during the regular part of the season. Sure. Because that's when the sun's out. I get it. And that's, but what ends up happening is, when you're paying somebody a salary of $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year, and they don't understand that it's important for them to continue to try to get extra overtime hours so that the profit is up. So it's always, it's a balancing act. I'm making less money, the better I've been doing in certain ways, which I'm trying to change because I have to grow the company in order to do that. I can't keep the same employee. I have to continuously grow. Yep. There's no way I can keep giving raises to people and just continuously raise my rates to my clients. So that's where I'm stuck in this spot where I want to be really generous. It's hard, but I won't. It's 20 years I've been in business, so I'm doing something right. And I'm not broke, but I have 3 kids too. What's that? I don't, because I'm an idiot.
I need your help.
Okay.
Hit by the tornado.
All right.
We still have landscaping issues.
Okay, thank you. That's growth right there now. Yeah. Well, and the tough part is you need a whole new crew, though, in order to cover it. If you just take on one client, you don't necessarily make any more money unless you take on more employees, but you need to take on enough. Anyway, I won't get into the semantics of my business, but
I'm glad you shared that.
My husband does landscape.
Yeah, so you know.
Yeah, there's peaks and valleys.
Peaks and valleys.
But payroll doesn't have a peak or a
Oh no, payroll is every 2 weeks, man.
Yeah. What do you think? I'm gonna stick with you for a moment. What do you think are your employees' biggest challenges?
Understanding. We had an employee that came in the other day. He had to fix his tire, and we needed him on the crew. And he's like, I don't need to come in the second half of the day. I don't feel like driving. I'm making enough money at this company anyway. Mm. So the rest of the crew ended up being like, F that guy, no offense. And he did get fired, actually, eventually. And so that stinks because it's like turnover. So I'm facing a weird problem in that respect.
So was
in terms of income.
He couldn't get there because he needed the tire repaired?
He got the tire repaired and decided he didn't want to have to drive a half an hour, even though I'd pay a half an hour of drive time, to work 3 hours for the rest of the day because he said, I'm making enough money. So that hurt the company's profit for the day, and it also hurt the morale of the rest of the employees.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. People calling in sick. But what do you think their complaints are? I think I might have gotten off track on that.
Yeah, what is making it hard for them to stay employed? You're paying a fair wage. You're giving travel time.
I'll be honest, I don't have a very high turnover unless I'm firing somebody.
Yeah.
Some of my employees right now have been with me 7 years, 6 years. Yeah. We have it's 20 years. Pay a living wage. It's like, wow, how hard is that? That's why I helped start GBC. Just in all fairness, I'm one of the founders. So,
cool.
From 2015. So, yeah, because we wanted to be on the legislative side.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love Angelique's. You're either at the table or you're on the menu.
Yep. That is correct.
Just say the name of your business.
Native Earth Landscape.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about resources that are out there. Everything that's on here, an employer can provide for free or for very low cost, or their employees can access for free or for very low cost. This is a partial list of public, private, and nonprofit resources that are available to make it easier for people to make ends meet. Okay? Does someone want to pick any one of these, and I'll explain? Pick public, private, or nonprofit, and pick one of the things you see, something you're interested in. I'll start to share rather than spending. Well, we got time. I can go through some of them, but someone pick one. That's more fun. Yeah.
So one of the biggest things that happens to people is they are not prepared for death or the dismemberment. So how can estate planning in a private, like, how would you help prevent them having a total meltdown as an employee because they weren't expecting?
It's a really good question. Does everybody know what estate planning is as a fundamental? Estate planning is just that. It's the process of making sure that your affairs are in order before you die. My dad, maybe your mom, didn't do a great job with that. And that makes life a lot harder, on your survivors. Here's an interesting fact. Does anybody know the percentage of children that receive a significant inheritance, meaning over $250,000, that view it as a curse instead of a blessing?
I would say over half, I would guess.
Okay, you guess
Over
50+%? What's your guess?
56.
56, I like that. You get prices right.
Yeah.
Anybody else have a guess?
57.
Oh.
It's almost 80%.
Wow.
End up viewing an inheritance as a curse instead of a blessing. That's a significant. Does anybody have any idea why that is?
They weren't prepared to talk about money or know how to deal with it because no one talks about money because it's rude sometimes.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
And taxes. Yeah.
Say that again.
Relationships.
What about relationships?
They want something from them, or relationships change because now they have money.
Yeah. Okay. You're pulling the right thread. If you think about yourself. If you got $200,000 today, $250,000.
I also got a target on my back because now people want to sell.
What else?
I bet overspending habits
So what
right
happens,
away, and then
they
debt.
change their lifestyle,
Yeah,
and the money's gone into.
got it.
So they end up saying, "Damn that inheritance!"
Yeah.
Because now I'm in a worse spot than I was.
Or they worry about the intent of the person who gave them that money. I've had clients who leave it in a zero interest account for years because they didn't know what they were supposed to do with it. The person didn't tell them.
Yeah. So estate planning is this right here that Megan asked about. And when we survey employees, so we do financial wellness for employers and employees, this is the issue that has the least amount of understanding around it. It's the most confusing issue. It's a really important thing to cover. Does anybody know what a power of attorney is? Oh, I saw a lot of nodding. All right. Does anybody know what a healthcare power of attorney is? Does anybody know what happens if you don't have powers of attorney? And you're What's that process look like?
It's ugly.
It's ugly and it's expensive. So at the very least, you want to make sure you have powers of attorney in Colorado. You can actually, I could put this in the public, you can get a access to a free template healthcare power of attorney document. You don't have to pay for it. Okay? But this is up here because your employer can offer access to estate planning for about $12 a month for you as an employee that covers your powers of attorney and your will. If you go to an attorney on your own and try to do that stuff, you're looking at spending somewhere between $750 and $1,500. Okay, so this is an opportunity where there's a private resource that reduces the cost by a factor of 10 that a lot of people just don't know about. You can DIY that stuff on the internet. You can also find living wills for free from the state of Colorado. And you can put together even it's called a durable power of attorney, which is just a fancy way of saying financial power of attorney. So if you're incapacitated, that's what powers of attorney are for. You're still alive, but you can't take care of yourself. Who's going to take care of the money? Who's going to decide what happens to you on the healthcare side? You want to have those. To me, those documents are more important than a will. Because who knows what happens when you die without a will? What?
Probate.
Probate. Well, actually, I love it. That's such a common misperception. Actually, a will guarantees probate.
Oh, yeah, okay,
A trust avoids probate.
okay.
A will
But you're
guarantees
contested,
probate.
right?
What?
You're considered contested.
Yeah, you're contested. But where's your money going? If you die without a will.
It gets
Yeah, let's say you're married. Let's say you're married. Who's it go to first?
Spouse.
Okay, let's say you have kids. Who's it go to next? Children. Okay, let's say you're not married and you don't have kids. Where's your money go?
Government.
Nope. Nope. What?
parents if you're
It's your closest living relatives, so siblings first, then parents in most states. Okay? For most of us, that's where we're going to send our money anyway. So dying without a will is not as big of a deal as people usually make out of it, because the state, what a will does is it takes you to probate, and the court says, this were Sarah's wishes, so we're going to make sure that these assets get distributed according to her wishes. If you die without a will, they basically say, here's the state will, we're going to make sure Sarah's assets get distributed according to.
I've had a lot of people actually say that they purposely don't want a will so that they don't have to make the decisions due to like worrying about how family members are going to feel.
I guess you think your family members that much, you want them to be able to defend you.
Well, yeah, I don't recommend it. I'm not saying that. Just
Now, because it goes through probate, I'm glad you're using that word. Probate is the process of the court making sure that assets are distributed according to the wishes of the deceased or the state. Okay? What happens to your assets because it's going to the court? What happens?
They freeze until they can actually be distributed where they need to go.
Well, yes, sort of, but that's true. But what's the more important issue?
Tax it.
Yes, it does get to anything that goes through probate gets taxed.
I guess, what are they like? So, like, if I'm holding on to it, I'm charging you to hold on to it until.
Yeah, so the scary answer is it's all public. Yep. Anything that goes to probate is a public record. So
All of a sudden, I'm your relative.
relative, creditors, everybody knows exactly what's there.
And in California, they take a percentage of the goods. So 3% of your assets goes to the process of probate as a charge.
We do that here too.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Yeah, so you get charged for them.
percentage.
Yeah, a percentage
rate.
A flat percentage. So that's why trusts are so great, because they don't have the probate charge on them.
Yeah, I
I was forced into putting a trust
just so
together.
you know, that's a will and trust. A trust avoids probate. A will does not. Okay, that was fun because I'm a nerd. What's something else? Maybe a more daily money management issue that you all would like to talk about? Housing. Where do you see that?
In the public.
Okay. There's lots of public housing resources. I already mentioned one. Who knows one public housing resource for people that are impoverished, or the government says.
Like DHA type
Section 8.
Section 8.
Section 8. Okay. So that's basically where does anybody know how Section 8 works?
Absolutely.
By lottery.
Well, let's say you got the benefit. I talked about benefit stuff a little earlier. What happens when you make? What do you pay in rent? Yes, 30% of your income. Okay. So the more money you make, the more your rent goes up. Now, if Section 8 was your only government benefit, that would be a big problem. But it's not. You're also getting Medicaid, probably food stamps, maybe some kind of support. You might be getting CPAP too, in which case remember I said minimum wage to $26 an hour? If you've got 2 kids in daycare, instead of $26 an hour, it's almost $42 to get there. Okay, so does anybody know any other housing assistance program, like home buying programs that the government administers? First home buyer program? What do you know about that, Jerry? You can get an FHA loan. Yep. You can get an FHA loan that makes it easier. What else can you do if you're a first-time home buyer that's other people? You can use retirement accounts to purchase a home. Does anybody know of an organization called CHAFA? Anybody heard that abbreviation before? They're advertising on the radio right now. The reason they're advertising on the radio is because it's a resource that's out there that can make a huge difference for a first-time home buyer, but people don't know about it. And what this screen is trying to express is that there are a tremendous number of value opportunities out there, but people don't know what they are, they don't know where to find them, and then they don't know how to navigate them. So what we have to do is not just find these value opportunities, we have to connect people and hold their hands through the process of accessing or harvesting that value. Housing is a really good example of that. There are also huge nonprofit supports in housing. Can anybody think of a nonprofit that supports housing together. Okay, it's a huge organization. Habitat for Humanity. Okay, Habitat for Humanity is really cool. What makes does anybody know what makes Habitat for Humanity so hard for a lot of people that need it the most? What do you have to do if you want a Habitat for Humanity house? So you got to build it, which means you can't work. Isn't that frustrating? Right? It's an amazing nonprofit. I've supported it. I've volunteered for them. But they're telling you have to stop working to build your house. They're telling someone that is financially strapped. So these are the kinds of barriers that we have to help overcome. A great employer that understands that they have an employee that needs habitat to access homeownership will hopefully provide the time necessary to put that sweater. All right, anything else? And then I'm going to talk about a couple of the fun ones here. Okay.
Insurance.
Where are you looking here?
Yeah.
Insurances. Okay. Insurance is one of almost all Americans' largest expenses. Okay. Can anybody name an insurance type that is mandatory? Auto. We have to have, if you have an automobile, you have to have car insurance. Who pays the highest amount for their insurance based on the profit that the insurance company earns? State minimum. State minimum insurance is the cheapest insurance and it's the most profitable. Has anybody seen an insurance ad that offers the ability to name your own price? Yes. Okay, they're all over, right? Right. Okay. This is a very bad idea.
Yeah.
And it pulls a lot of people in. It's very profitable for insurance companies. It's very bad for the insurance because people aren't properly insured. And actually, if you're properly insured, usually the insurance company is making a lot less profit off of you. You might be paying more premiums, but the insurance company is making a lot less profit off of you. And if you have a claim, you're in a much better position. There are private resources that allow you to shop that insurance and identify how much insurance you actually need that costs you nothing to use. And we use them with our clients. We will very often see savings of 20% off your premium with better coverage. This is,
Does that go for workman's comp insurance as well?
No, that's a little different.
Okay. Well, I won't sideline you.
Marketplace for that.
Yeah.
It's a good question. We can talk about that offline. So insurance, like your cell phone, by the way, is counterintuitive. The longer you have been with one company, the more likely you are to be overpaying. Loyalty costs you with home and auto insurance. You want to shop your home and auto insurance at a minimum every 18 months. Right now, it's really expensive. Does anybody know why? Especially homeowners insurance is really expensive right now.
All these disasters.
Yeah, all these disasters.
We've had so many. We had a tornado,
The fires.
We've had the fires up north.
And the houses that were all burned down.
Yeah, we've had hail. So you're actually seeing some insurers pull out of Colorado completely. However, when just think about this for a moment, when was a really cheap time to buy home and auto insurance in the last 3 years?
Never.
No, there was. So when
Was it caught in the pandemic?
Yes. Why?
We weren't driving around.
We weren't going anywhere. We weren't doing anything.
Oh, wow.
People weren't out cost. So this is why you want to do it every 18 months or so, because when you shop, the moment that those insurance companies are either not experiencing claims, COVID, right? Almost no one's driving, almost everybody's staying at home, which decreases liability. It's a great time to shop for insurance. Okay, a bad time to shop for insurance is right now when the state has just experienced so much disaster. That's why every 18 months you want to shop. If you don't shop, you'll never get a lower price. Okay, but you can avoid it. So that's just an example of it. Now, healthcare. There is a private resource called the Health Matching Account. You put in, let's say, $50 a month for 3 years. Okay, and an insurance company will match your contributions. At the end of 3 years, you have twice the amount you put in. Okay. So again, a resource a lot of people don't know about. So if you know that there's a medical expense coming up, or you have ongoing medical expenses, and you can set aside, or your employer can set aside some money in this account, 3 years, you're going to have this account that's 50% paid for by the insurance.
Separate from an HSA, obviously.
Yes.
Do the two affect each other?
No.
Good.
It has no tax benefits like an HSA does.
But an HSA has a
Good
cap.
question. Okay, so Sarah Brown, who knows what an HSA is? Does anybody even know what it stands for? What does HSA stand for?
HSA is awesome.
What it stands for?
Health savings
Health savings account.
account. Yeah, it's slowly coming to me.
It's got the best tax advantages of any account you can set up because the money that goes in isn't taxed and the money
And you could buy Advil with it.
you can buy almost anything.
Yeah. Yeah. No, like Band-Aids, like
So who ends up using HSAs for that?
I know of clients who don't actually spend the money, they just invest it and consider it a tax shelter.
Yeah.
ooh, no, not everybody. I have 3 kids.
Yeah, no, not everybody, but again, it's kind of complicated the way HSAs work, right? Same as FSAs, there's huge potential in tax savings here, but the system's kind of complicated to navigate, and it's kind of a pain in the butt to navigate. So if you don't trust or you're not familiar with those systems, you're not going to be able to access that value. Employers have the power to fix that by helping people, not just providing an HSA or an FSA, but holding people's hands through the process of using those resources. All right. What's the most valuable resource any of us have? Anybody?
Time.
Time. Okay. I think any human being human beings time is priceless. What do employers have access to? Your time. Does anybody know what percentage of a working month 30 minutes is? Or does anybody know approximately how many working hours we have?
22 working days.
Close, 160. How many? Okay.
22 working days in a month on average.
Okay. Yes. So it's 160 and change. It's a little over 100. It's about 176. Okay. So, what percentage of 176 is 0.5?
357.
Yeah. Not very much, right? Less than 0.5%. So, if employers just set aside 30 minutes a month of paid time, this is really important that it's paid, to counsel their employees on issues like this, it can make a huge difference in those people's lives. So we hear a lot from employers, so I can't, not only can I not afford your service, I can't afford the time. How much time do you think the average employee spends thinking about these issues while they're working?
Mm-hmm.
And how does that impact their productivity? You're already paying for a lot more than that time. The reason employers, now I'm going to step back to a bigger picture here. The reason employers can have such a big impact on your well-being is because they have access to your time. Right now we go to work and it feels like all our problems are on hold while we're at work. What if work was the place you went to solve them? What if your employer set aside even an hour a month to cover financial wellness, mental wellness, physical wellness? Said, hey, I know that you seeing a primary care physician and having a plan of care and following that plan of care is going to reduce my healthcare costs and make you happier and healthier. This is on your task list for today. You must go see your primary care physician. By the way, if you're offered this is a free request. You can even do it virtually today. There's great services out there at very low cost that can facilitate that. And then making sure the employees following that plan of care has the opportunity to. So work can be the place you go to solve your problems if your employer has the courage to recognize that actually giving you some of that time to solve your problems is much more valuable than pretending you're not going to think about or impact about those problems. So listen, that's a step of courage. I am an employer. I understand how hard this is. Yes.
Can you make it mandatory?
Yes.
Really? Because I've offered a program of wellness and nobody takes me up on it except for very few people. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of shocking. I'm always like, why is nobody doing this?
You can make it mandatory.
Okay. I didn't know that I could do that, so I should have talked to HR. But.
Yeah.
So you're saying beyond the EAP programs, if you have an
Yes.
EAP?
Yeah, EAP program is, EAPs offer so much value potential. Do you know what percentage of employees use EAP?
Less than 20%. 7.
Yeah.
People need help before the crisis comes.
Yeah, well, but it's not just that. There's so much value to, Reagan was talking about this next door. Let's say I'm at a landscape company and I have the EAP. What am I going to do after a hard day's work? I want to go home and Netflix and chill. And even if I am willing to log on, here's the problem with EAPs. You've got to get someone on the phone, and you've got to get approval for whatever service it is you want, or connection to whatever service it is you want. And that's before you even talk to mental health, before you even talk to the counselor who you may not. And all that time, most employees are worried about confidentiality issues. Mm-hmm. So you don't trust the system, you don't know the system, so you don't know the system. Right? Employers can solve that problem by holding people's hands through that process and say, hey, instead of you going to do that after you're done with your 8 or 9 or 10 hours, I'm going to give you today that call, get that set up, and please schedule that. I get pushback on this all the time. What about a manufacturing company? Do you ever have meetings with managers? Do you open enrollment every year? So don't tell me that all 8 hours of your employee's time is always on the line. It's not. You've got meetings that they probably hate, right? You could add some time for them to take care of the stuff they need to take care of. You can do it. It's not, any employer that says this is impossible, it's not. Do you want to? I'm not saying it's easy, it's hard. But it's do you want to? And then ultimately, it's not just, going back to the previous slide, this can make your head spin. There's so many resources. We keep a list that's over 325 resources now. Okay, so there's a lot. But man, if you can get the right resource to the right person at the right time, in a 30-minute call 2 weeks ago, I saved someone $13,000. Okay, they were going through a divorce, which unfortunately I'm familiar with. Their spouse had to give them a percentage of their retirement account. Fidelity, who held the retirement assets, didn't know the law that in this situation, that person doesn't have to pay the penalty when they take the withdrawal, the 10% penalty for taking the withdrawal, charged them the 10% penalty on withdrawal, which was $13,000 in this case, just because they didn't know the system. And you know what? I'm not bagging on Fidelity. It's a $15 an hour person in a call center looking at a script, and their script says when someone takes a distribution before age 59 and a half, there's a 10% withdrawal penalty, so we have to take that out of the distribution, right? So this person almost lost 13 grand, but fortunately they had someone to and so that's this last bullet point, right? Give them the time, give them the resources, but also make sure you're giving them a handhold to harvest the potential value of those solutions. All right, it's 11:48. Does anybody have any questions or anything else they want to share or say?
I guess I want to know how much handholding you had. Like you just said, you had an example that 401k withdrawal there.
Yeah.
But how much hands-on do you get?
I say as hands-on as you need to be is the answer to that question. So our business service is exactly what I'm describing to you. What we do is employers pay for our service $35 per participating employee per month. And then we meet with every employee for 30 minutes and help them navigate all those resources, connect them with all that. And on average, we're putting over $3,200 back in people's pockets. So employers are paying us $420, we're giving people $32. There's some deeper issues that we didn't have time to get into today as well. I touched on them. Hope you heard them. This is also a DEI issue because the people that need the value the most tend to access it the least because they don't trust or understand the systems. So we believe financial wellness should put more dollars in people's pockets, and we believe that it should reduce wage gaps, wealth gaps, and health gaps. That's real wellness, right? And so we're trying to be that resource that helps people harvest the value, helps people navigate very complex systems to access the money. But the answer is, you've got to do whatever it takes. Equity is about outcomes, not about resources. Unfortunately, unfortunately, our government mandates equality. If you offer healthcare, you have to offer everyone the same plans. That you're not equal access does not equal outcomes. So if you're really serious about equity, you as the employer have to make sure, how am I helping the people that I know the healthcare system doesn't treat as well? How am I helping to make sure those people have equal outcomes? But the government says, no, you just have to give everybody equal resources. So Abby, what were you going to say?
So what would you do in this situation? At the time, my husband was working for a company, and transportation was needed. So, we both needed to get back to work. So we bought a vehicle. Pandemic happened. Husband ended up going to jail. It's just me. I'm part-time to take care of my father-in-law. And here comes a $400 car payment, $500 car insurance. And so interest is going up. So now I'm in a predicament, like we're now working for ourselves. However, this debt. So how do we either get rid of the car, interest, or whatever? But at the time, it was required for both of us to be at our jobs at a certain time. So, and he could have caught the bus, but his locations were at different sites, and mine was steady. So he was able to drop me off and then go and then pick me up. So our schedule worked that way. So how would you with recommendations?
Yeah, I love that question. No. Please don't apologize. I carry this with me everywhere I go. This is a Wall Street Journal. It's from June 4th, 2020. Everybody see this headline? Remind us exactly when this was. This was right in the middle of the George Floyd murder issue. But that's not why I carry this. Right down here is an article on the front page. Payday lenders sidestep ad bans and state restrictions. This is an article on how a woman in South Carolina had a car repair issue. South Carolina has anti-payday lender laws, but those laws can be circumvented when you're online. She Googled how to get a loan with bad credit. She ended up paying 298% interest on a 12-month loan. She paid almost $3,000 on a $1,500 car. Okay. She could have access to someone that could have helped her do that much more affordably. A really good employer you could go to, you feel comfortable going to and saying, hey, this is my situation. Employers can access rates through enterprise, especially extremely cheaply. They probably could have rented you a car for like $12 a day while you figured out how to refinance that car or sell that car or find an alternative form.
Or even loan the money.
Or even money.
Because then they can pay it back.
Yeah, there's a really cool service called E4E where employers can set up interest-free loans to their employees. Their employees can pay back anytime, so it might be loaning. Yeah. So there's all kinds of things that employers can do to make that situation a lot easier that are actually much lower cost than replacing. And so you got an employer might say, I don't want to spend $12 a day on a car. Well, what's it going to cost you?
If you're not working.
Even at Walmart, replacing an employee costs about $2,500. Okay, for a company like yours, it probably costs closer to 1 times the salary of that person. And the higher paid you are, actually the more expensive you are to replace. So if you're making $75,000 a year, it might cost the company $125,000 in total time it costs to replace you. So smart employers going to say, I need to help you find a solution. So right now, today, if someone from Enterprise is going to come pick you up, I'll cover the cost of that rental for a week. During this, you come in, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to sit down and we're going to figure out how to solve it.
And Enterprise is awesome.
Enterprise is awesome.
It really is.
So what could you have done? You could have gone to a website like LendingTree or a credit union and said, hey, this is my predicament. How can you help? We could have found out if you would have qualified for a lower interest loan. Not only is that important to reduce your interest costs, but what happens when you refinance? Does anybody know? When you refinance a car loan, same thing as when you refinance a house.
Another version of your credit? Or income ratio changes?
No.
You to pay again.
You get to skip a couple months of payments.
The grace period.
So you could have gone 45 days back. Yeah. Right. So there's all these different things that could have been or could be a big help to you. You don't know about them and you don't know how to navigate them. You're never going to get that value. So that's what it's about. It's knowing where the value is and then helping people connect it to them at the right time. Now, if I had told you this and you didn't have car trouble, you'd probably forget this whole story, which is why it's important to be able to connect the resources at the right time. Right resources at the right time.
And a forbearance from the company.
Sometimes. I'd rather you pay
So
late.
now that I'm a self-employed person,
Yeah.
and like I said, the landscaping and everything like that. So how do we get these services to offer our employees? Like, how do we get these resources or connect with these other things that you're telling me to be able to offer these to our employees?
Yeah. We're happy to share our 320 our list of resources. If you want to share that with the place, we're happy to share that. If you want someone to do the work for you, we can do the work for you. So it's up to you. If you want to do it yourself, we want to give you the resources to do it. If you want us to do it for you, we want to do it for you as an expensive.
Again, time is valuable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And some employees are never going to. That's another struggle, and that's not your fault necessarily. They may have trauma that tells them I should never trust this person, no matter how nice they seem. Right?
Hey, the company store isn't that far long ago, okay?
Hey, thank you all so much for your time. Thank you.